everyone, it's Allie and welcome to my channel, and in today's video I'm going to be talking to you about all the books that I read during the months of January and February. Alright you guys, so yeah, I had a pretty good start to the year with reading. I lowered my Goodreads goal for the year from the 100 that I've done for the last two to 50, and even though I told myself that number didn't really affect me, I didn't really care that much if I hit it, and I did not hit it the last 2 years. I think I got maybe at the most 87. I do feel like choosing to lower the goal has just kind of taken off a pressure from me, and also not really doing TBRs too much anymore has allowed me to really just read whatever I feel like next. But as far as TBRs go, I do still plan on doing like seasonal TBRs. But I just felt really bad last year when I would tell you guys I was going to read something and then maybe I'd force myself to read it even if I didn't really feel like it, or I just wouldn't fulfill my TBR. I just felt like I was like letting you down in a way, even though I know literally nobody cares. But yeah, I'm such a mood reader that even if I think I'm going to read something as I'm finishing one book, I might not actually pick it up next. But a lot of these books that I have read the last couple of months were ones that I really had wanted to read at the end of last year. They were super high in my mind of what I wanted to read next, and a lot of them did not disappoint. So for my first book of the year, I wanted to start off with one that I had a very strong feeling I would love because I do love this author. And that book is Kate Atkinson's Shrines of Gaiety. Huge Kate Atkinson fan. I think I maybe have rated one of her books that I've read a 4.5, and honestly I could have rated it a 5-star just compared to other ones. I felt like it was a little bit less, but this author is nearly perfect in my mind. I just really enjoy her writing style. She has a detective series, the Jackson Brodie series, so I've read a few of those, but she's also written some other just standalone ones like this one. I don't think I could say this was my top Kate Atkinson pick of all time, but I did still give it 5 stars. I did think it was excellent. So it actually is a story inspired by the life of Kate Mayrick, who ran underground clubs in Soho. And I really like this one because it's like part historical fiction, but there's also mystery going on. And Atkinson, I think, is just the absolute queen of character development, and the internal dialogue that she writes, I think, is so interesting. I think in a lot of books, internal dialogue can become a bit boring, and maybe it just doesn't even sound accurate to how people speak and think. But all of the characters in her books are just so well thought out. They are so multifaceted, and her books really just draw you in, I find. So solid start to the year, 5 stars, and of course would recommend this author. She is a British person, so maybe if you don't love like UK humor, she has a bit of a dark humor, you probably won't like her as much, but I am someone who personally does like that style of humor. I forgot that I listened to this next one on audiobook, and that is Little Women, and I've read it before. I have like 3 copies, I think, from different collections, but Little Women is one of my favorite stories of all time. The 90s version of the movie is one of my favorite movies of all time, and I'm trying to get a little bit more into audiobooks. Honestly, I failed a lot since listening to this one, but I think for me, audiobooks are best when they are dramatized and they are a story that I'm pretty familiar with already. And so I listened to the dramatized version that is narrated by Laura Dern. So yeah, if you're someone like me who kind of does struggle to listen to audiobooks, I do think the dramatized versions help. And if you are familiar with the story of Little Women, you know there's a lot of going back and forth between the sisters, and they're like literally talking over each other in the audiobook, so it feels kind of like you are watching the movie or just something that makes a little bit more sense for real life. And there's also talk of like playing the piano and stuff like that, and in those scenes there is an actual piano being played. So I did really like it. 5-star read for me. Love Little Women, and I do think that dramatized version was very well done. Next up, we have a really interesting one, and that is The Devil in the Dark Water by Stuart Turton. So he wrote The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, which I read some point in the fall last year, and I just absolutely loved it. I thought it was such an interesting story. It was told from many different perspectives, kind of like the same day being relived over and over by different people. But I thought his writing style was so good. It was kind of a thriller, kind of a detective mystery, and it really stuck out to me, and it's one that I'm still thinking about many months later, and I'm excited to reread in the future because it's one that I think you can just pick up more and more from every time you do read it. So of course, as soon as I finished that book, I looked up more from the author, and he doesn't have too much out yet, so I was very excited to pick this one up, and it was top of my TBR list for the beginning of the year. So I gave 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle 5 stars. This one I did think was excellent, but I did prefer the other one a little bit more, so I ended up giving this 4.5. And the main reason that I did give this more of a 4.5 than a 5-star was I had a hard time getting into it a little bit, but once I was into it, I absolutely love the story, and like the other one, I probably will reread this again in the future. This book is also set on a ship in the sea, and for some reason, I just really love books that are set on ships in the ocean. So if you like that too, definitely pick this one up. And the author with this one, he actually has a note either at the beginning or the end of the book, I think the end of the book, where he says this is kind of historical fiction. It's like historical fiction-ish, but it's almost like Pirates of the Caribbean vibes, where it's like some of the things are kind of historically accurate, but a lot of it is made up. And he said that's kind of how he felt with this book. Like he was a lot more concerned with the plot of the story than like a bunch of super specific ship talk and talk from the time. I think this is set technically like in the 1600s. Yes, set in 1634. So just know that as you read it, it's not going to be perfectly historically accurate, but the core of the story is very solid. So a bit of historical fiction, a bit of mystery. Man, we just had so many bangers at the beginning of the year. The next one was The Fury, which is by Alex Michaelides. I say his name different every time. Apologies to him. He is Greek, and all of his books so far, I think this is the third one. Yeah, the third one. They are all set in the same universe, but you don't have to read them necessarily in the order they came out. He is the author of The Silent Patient, which I'm sure you've heard of, and I absolutely love that book. He also wrote The Maidens, which I did not enjoy as much, but still really enjoyed it. This one, I would say, comes second in that lineup. I think The Silent Patient is still my favorite one, but this one was also very good. This author writes a lot of unreliable narrators. A lot of his characters have different mental health issues, and overall, I just find that his books really stick out in the thriller genre, and that he is just an excellent author. So I'd recommend everything. Mostly The Silent Patient, which does deserve all the hype it got when it came out, but this is a very close second. And a big reason why I did like this book as well is that there are multiple characters, and one of them is an ex-movie star, and kind of weirdly, like the ship thing, I just really like books that are set around Hollywood, or like people who were in Hollywood and now aren't. That's why I really did like Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid as well. So this is one I ate up very fast, and I am so looking forward to his next book. I did rate The Fury 5 stars, and the next one I also rated 5 stars, and I swear you guys, I don't just give everything 5 stars, I just really was looking forward to a lot of these. I was picking books that I was quite sure I'd really enjoy, and that's just something I'm trying to do more of in the future, is not just pick up books because people on BookTube or Bookstagram talk about them, but because I really do think I will enjoy them. So that's why I would say I've had a very good start to the year. But this one was kind of a random pickup from me. This is All the Ever Afters, The Untold Story of Cinderella's Stepmother by Danielle Teller. I got this on Book Outlet, and I did imagine that I would like it because I am a huge fan of fairy tale retellings, but this one was so unexpectedly excellent. I just thought it'd be kind of like, okay, whatever. This, I think, is the best Cinderella retelling I've ever read. I am a huge fan of the Ever After movie, so I love that movie, but this is such a good retelling, and I really like this because it's super historical fiction, and then the Cinderella story makes sense within it, but there's a lot of original ideas in here, super well written, and yeah, I just love that historical fiction aspect of it. So I would say it's almost inspired by Cinderella more than a retelling, just because there is so much new content. So a surprising 5 stars, but if you also like fairy tale retellings, if you like Cinderella retellings and you have not read this, pick this one up. And maybe it's still on Book Outlet. You could probably get it for just a few bucks. Link in description if you have never bought from them before. Love, love Book Outlet. Okay, we're back down to 4 stars, and I guess I did give this one back already. So this is My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You She's Sorry by Frederick Bachman. He's one of my absolute favorite authors. I'm not really a massive literary fiction girly, but I feel like when I find a book in that genre that I really like, it really does stick with me. So many of Frederick Bachman's books have been 5 stars. But with all that being said, I think this one was actually my least favorite of his books, but I still enjoyed it. The main character in this story is this little girl whose grandmother has recently passed away, and she's given the girl kind of a scavenger hunt of letters that she needs delivered to different people. And in each letter, the grandmother is apologizing to people for different reasons. So there's a lot of the girl like coping with the death of her grandmother and just finding out more about the people. And they all live in the same apartment building, so that's kind of fun. So would recommend, 4 stars from me, but ultimately one of my least favorite Bachman books. Then I really got on a thriller kick, which tends to happen to me. And first up, I read I Know Who You Are by Alice Feeney. Some of these thriller authors, I'm just kind of slowly working my way through their collections, and Alice Feeney is one of those for me. So this book is wacky. If you have read it, you know what I mean. The ending is like bizarre. And as someone who reads a lot of thrillers, you kind of get the vibe of like who the killer is going to be a lot of times. You can kind of predict the twists because they have to make sense, you know? So you can't even fault the authors for that. But this one, the ending is so crazy. I don't think anyone could ever in a million years guess this ending. So if you are looking for a book like that, pick this one up, but it is like really crazy. I did give this a 3.75. I think it was fine. I liked that I didn't predict the ending, but overall just wasn't my favorite story from this author, and there were some off-putting things in this, I'll just say that. But it does have an unreliable narrator, which I like in a thriller, and it's also set in 2 different times. So you've got the adult person and then her childhood self. Then I read Survive the Night by Riley Sager, another author that I'm really excited to read everything that he's written at some point. I really enjoyed this thriller because it was a little bit atypical. It's set in 1991, where I guess people did ride sharing a lot more, which is totally terrifying, where people would just like have a message board at college campuses saying, hey, I'm driving home to Pennsylvania, whatever, I have a seat, you want to come be in my car, pay for gas, you can do that. So there was a lot more of people just like not knowing who they were driving with. And this story kind of goes into the worst nightmare of that situation of accepting a ride from a stranger and that person maybe not being a killer. So a lot of this book is set like in the car ride, so it's set not over a large period of time, which I think is pretty fun in a thriller. So while this is not my favorite book from this author, I do appreciate that it was different and I would recommend it. And this one, like the Alice Feeney book, I did end up giving 3.75 stars. But I was really feeling the author, I guess, because then I did read Home Before Dark. This thriller stuck out to me because it is following a woman whose dad wrote a best-selling book about his family's very short-lived stay in what he thought was a haunted house. And the author is convinced that the dad just made it up, and she's like really mad about it and everything. Then she inherits the house and is going to investigate. She's getting ready to sell it, and she wants to see what's up with this house, have some closure from her childhood. So that's part of the story, but then also within that story is the dad's book. So it's really interesting, I think, to have both aspects of that in this story. This one I did give 4 stars. I would say I definitely like this one more than Survive the Night, but I like this author because all of his books do feel quite different. Okay, then we had, I don't know if I want to say I DNF'd it because it's a hard book to read straight through, but I kind of DNF'd this one. This is Madly Deeply, The Diaries of Alan Rickman. I have a lot of memoirs and nonfiction on my shelf that I really want to read, but for some reason I have a hard time reaching for those books when I have maybe easier books to read on the fiction shelf. But I am going to challenge myself to read at least 10 nonfiction books this year. And this one I was like really excited about because one, I'm nosy, and the idea of reading somebody's diary is very intriguing. And I do like Alan Rickman. I am a massive Harry Potter nerd, but I also do like him in a lot of other things. So I was hoping for some interesting behind the scenes stuff like that. But honestly, a lot of his entries are like very fragmented. They're very short entries. And he was a big British theater person. That was kind of his main thing, doing live theater. So he's talking about a lot of people who I personally have no clue who they are. I don't think most people would know who they are. So I would say if you are really only interested in him more for like the Harry Potter side of things, I would pass on this book. And for some reason, I thought that I had read before that like he gave permission, like he had planned to have this published before he did pass away. But then in the foreword, it says that he didn't, that they just kind of decided, his family or whatever, decided to publish this after he passed away. So if that is true, and maybe I am misremembering that part, but if it is true that he did not even know that this was going to be published, that is a little odd to me. I don't really like that. I would not be happy if I had a diary that my family published after I died. There's nothing like too crazy in here, but he definitely like says his honest opinions about people. But yeah, because there are like so many fragmented entries and stuff, I don't know if you can really tell like just how many different entries are on one page. It's kind of hard to read this just like front to back. And I skimmed a lot of it, and then I think I got to a point where there were like technically probably 75 pages left, and I just wasn't really interested anymore, so I did kind of DNF this one. And then the last book is one that I was kind of afraid to read for a while just because I assumed the hype would be too high, but I did really enjoy it, and that is Divine Rivals. So this one I am sure you've heard of, got a ton of attention last year, and actually the second book in the duology is already out. I love that of the author and the publishing company. I'm sure marketing-wise it was very smart, but she released this one last year, and then yeah, the second book came out just a few months later. So I haven't read that one yet, but I definitely will. I love that this was like historical fiction-ish. It was like not at all real historical fiction, but it had that feel. And then there also is like some mythology in there, which I think is cool, and I think I've heard that that is a lot more present even in the second book. But this is the kind of romance that I enjoy because there's so much else going on than just the romance. And the romance itself I thought was really cute. I really like both of the main characters. And there's a lot of letter writing going on, which I absolutely love in a book. So I think there's something for everyone in this story, and it was written a lot better than I expected. So I would recommend, and I believe I gave it 4.5 stars. So that was everything I read in January and February of this year, and I've read some solid ones in March so far too. Looking forward to a year of really good reading a lot of books that are just interesting to me, and hopefully if you follow me here on this channel, we have at least similar-ish taste, and that these reviews are at least in some way helpful to you. But if you like this video, please make sure to give me a big thumbs up and subscribe. It really does help my channel out a lot. But thanks again for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!